Hey guys, Mike here. So today we're going to answer all your questions, and you had some really good ones. And if you're new to the channel, you never seen me rant, but in this video, I will definitely go on a rant because I get pretty passionate about certain subjects, and somebody asked a question about one, and I enjoyed the question, so I appreciate them putting it in there. And so I will definitely set the record straight on that one for sure. And you guys had some good questions about, Meltups, why is the market so bullish on rate cuts? I'll show you why. And many other things, especially with what technical indicator we use, things of this nature, where to find flows. And so let's go ahead and the first one here comes from Vince, and he says, Mike, does this mean that the markets are melting up, or is it just growth? That's a good question there, Vince. And to me, it's almost hard to answer because, when you look at the definition of a melt up here, it is a sudden persistent rise in the price of a security or market, often due to investor herding. Melt ups are not necessarily indicative of a fundamental shift and may reflect more market psychology, which of course is those fear and greed indexes we look at. We look at the bear, bull, indicators and stuff like that. And I've showed you how really, really hot those are. But also the big risk of a melt up, just so you know this, is overvaluation, right? One of the most significant risks of a melt up is that stocks become overvalued, meaning that their prices are higher than their fundamental value. This can happen when investors become overly optimistic and start to buy stocks based on speculation rather than sound financial analysis, i.e. the AI hype for a lot of stocks that aren't going to be able to turn into revenue. Like an NVIDIA has, like an AMD will, but there's a whole lot of stocks that will not be able to turn and convert the hype into revenue. Just like the dot-com bubble, those stocks will burn. And then, of course, how hyped up does an NVIDIA, AMD, like what price is the real price before it becomes overvalued? We're going to find out in a bunch of earnings calls. But I will show you, I like to look at this right here. This is a visual of what a melt up actually is. From one of my favorite movies, World War Z, and this is what happens. Everybody's bearish, and all of a sudden sentiment turns. Right, this is kind of like shows you what happened in, I think it was February, March, and then in November, and you can see the herd starts to pile in. Right, big money starts to pile in first. Then here comes the retail investors coming in there, and everybody's like, "Don't leave me, don't leave me." And then right at the very top, that's when everybody starts full porting, saying, "Don't leave me, don't leave me." And so, unfortunately, also you're looking at 40% of the Qs and 33% of the S&P at least are, sitting there in 7 stocks, right? And so, and one of those stocks aren't even participating right now. We're still at all-time highs. That would be Tesla, right? And we still got room on Google and Amazon, as I showed you. I'll show you actually in more detail in the Mars video, but also showed you in Friday's video briefly. And so, the other ones like Meta just set all-time new highs, NVIDIA, AMD, new all-time highs every single day, Microsoft, all-time new highs. Apple hadn't got back to the all-time new high it set a couple weeks ago, but it's getting there. And you see Apple's growth. I mean, it's almost non-existent, right? But it's this thing. Microsoft still has some growth. Obviously, the AI hype is just driving things, right? But you hadn't seen revenue growth in a whole lot of these companies. You've seen a couple companies, right? Especially the semiconductors. But as far as the other companies who are trying to hype it up, they haven't been able to convert it yet into revenue. So that's the big question right now. That's the big question. But remember, whether it's growth, whether it's a melt up, we're going to find out. It won't take too much longer, I don't think. But you're also going to understand, remember, the market likes to go up over 70+% of the time. Okay. And so, call it what you want to call it. That's a very good question. I even tried to Google like the definition of a melt up, like a time where it actually was a melt up, and I couldn't find a year. So if you can find one, let me know. Now, next question comes, can you explain to me why the stock market is bullish on rate cuts? I mean, you don't have to be a genius to Google Fed funds rate versus S&P 500. Very true. This is what they're looking for, though. A soft landing narrative type deal, or just when they cut rates and the market don't go down, right? 2018, we cut rates. We started cutting rates in July of 2019. That's way before any of this stuff was going on, coming over from China or anything else, right? And the market went up 13%, okay? Then you look at 1997, I think it was another time they started cutting rates, and the market started going up, right? And so it ended up going up after they cut rates, and that was kind of a soft landing narrative, I believe, was that year. And so will that happen? I mean, we're not going to know. Let's just be real about it. We'll have to wait and see what happens and whether or not we'll come a recession because, again, when you shut down supply chains, the world and everything else, it has thrown everything out of whack. Look at the housing market, okay? Look at the housing market. Talk about that Friday. It's a disaster, all right? But meanwhile, people still have jobs. Some of them have 2 or 3 jobs, but they still have jobs. But we still have savings. Everybody with appreciating assets is loving life right now. And so that's the big difference in what's happening right now. But very good question. Now, next one comes from John here. He says, where is the fear and greed index that you mentioned other than CNN? It's this one right here. Just type in PY investing fear and greed index. This one right here is different because it measures the stocks that are above their 6-month moving average, also in an uptrend. Okay, so those are two key factors here, and it's pretty cool. And you can scroll down. They have a chart here, which I would highly suggest you go back and look at like historical data and compare some of the dates to charts and everything. And you'll see you do not want to be buying when this thing is over like 75, 78% somewhere in there. And you definitely don't want to be selling when it's down there like below 10. All right. So just take a look at it. It's pretty good one. I like to follow it because it's different than the CNN one. Now, and guys, before we continue, if you could hit that like button for me, I sure would appreciate it. It helps people find this video and everything. And also, if you like the content, think about subscribing, guys. Next one here says, what website do you use to find the call sweeps? And there's many different sites you can look up right here. And I have no affiliation with any of these for the record. Cheddar Flow is one of them. They'll actually send stuff out in tweets. Looking at Flow Algo is another one. And another one you guys mentioned to me is Options Strat. And of course, I mean, there's probably 10 others as well. But I did want to take a moment to show you how powerful some of these flows can be when they come out, right? So this was, I think I showed you this Thursday. And this whale here had bought February 2nd calls, and it was sweeps, right? And it was like $11 million worth, I believe. So a lot. And within like 24 hours, this person's up 90%, right? They were actually over 100% by the end of the day, and who knows if they sold or not. And so they're up $11 million, right? And so that's crazy. Right? And it may have been Wednesday they bought these, but you see the big ones come through. Sometimes they're hedges, but sometimes people know stuff, right? And it can absolutely shift the market and start having people flow in because a lot of people get these alerts and stuff. And so that's kind of just something I wanted to show you. Now, next one comes from Vanna, I believe here. Apple has 4 consecutive quarters of falling revenues, but hit all-time highs. Don't see something wrong here. And I actually created this channel during earnings season here because I subscribed to this website here for the members and stuff. So you can visually see this. And so when we click on Apple, for example, you'll see, instead of having to read their income statement, things like that, the growth and stuff. And to show you what this person's talking about, you know, this just shows Q4, of course, but you can see in Q4, you see a lot of negatives, right? Negative year-over-year revenue, products negative, and you go to the left and you can see, I mean, minus 10%, down 3%, you know, all this stuff. And so not like a great thing there, right? And then, of course, if we go over to a company like Microsoft, which I've been talking about and stuff, saying it needs to be above Apple for sure, you can see, wow, look at that, up 13% year over year. All of the products, positive double digits, right? Gross profit, the margins, like, what is that, 71% or some crazy mess? Operating 48%. But the big thing you're looking at here, it isn't about what they're doing as far as now on earnings, right? It has to do with stuff like this. You got guys like Warren Buffett with his company. Just look at the stock portfolio and look at what he's got in Apple, 168 billion. Add up every other stock he owns, and it don't add up to anywhere close to that. Over half their stock portfolio is Apple, right? What else? Look at this right here. Apple spent over $600 billion in 10 years to buy back stock. Just to buy back stock with $600 billion just in 10 years. How can they do this, of course? Well, look at all the cash. As of, what was this, November 2nd last year, they have $162 billion in cash sitting out there. And so I just want you to keep that in mind, right? Try to really picture that. How many companies do you know even made $162 billion or $160 billion in revenue, top line revenue over the last 10 years, right? It's not a whole great deal of them, right? And this company has $162 billion in cash. They're purchasing back, was average $60 billion a year in stock, right? And they pay a dividend and stuff like that. And it's just one of the most highly owned in pension funds and everywhere else, right? It's just this big little ship just selling out there. Now, eventually, Apple won't be the number one anymore. This happens through the history of the stock market. There's always been one stock where they go, oh, this is the one, right? And you look at Microsoft, I think Microsoft needs to top them, right? Microsoft does have growing revenues. Some people are going to argue it needs to be NVIDIA. Maybe it will be NVIDIA for the next 10 years. You never know, right? It's going to get taken out. But right now, as Apple has shown, as Apple goes, and we'll throw Microsoft in there, the market's going to go. That's just the way it is. So you're looking at fundamentals, and I get that. But as you can see, I think the argument can be made. You can see Apple's performance in the stock, as far as the chart's concerned. It's not about fundamentals for Apple, right? It hadn't been for probably quite a while when you look at that, because there's plenty of stocks. You can probably put some in the comments right now that you think should be number one over Apple, who has way better fundamentals. But right now, people just aren't, the big boys just aren't looking at that right now. But it will get knocked off. Always does. All right. And also understand that I think I showed you these guys, and those who are new, you wouldn't know this, but in hedge funds or in these funds, like, and I only learned this like a few months ago, like they only have a certain percentage the whole fund can own, right? But they got many fund managers in there, right? So if I sell my Apple shares, one of the other fund managers can pick it up and I can't buy back because we only have a one piece of the pie, right? And that person just took my piece of the pie. So a lot of them just hold it. That's what they do. They just hold it. And so that's another thing. People are very hesitant to sell this, and probably Microsoft too. But hopefully that answers your question, I hope. Now, next one comes from Wade here. He says, hey, Mike, which MACD indicator are you using in TradingView? And I simply just go in here and it's just MACD. That's the one I have started. Just type in MACD. That's the one I'm using. Nothing special. It's just a regular MACD indicator. If you guys are using something different that's better than this, let me know. I'm always, looking to upgrade and stuff. But hopefully that answers your question. Now the last one here comes from Brady. He says, Mike, where does your dislike for super wealthy people come from? As far as I know, Elon wants more control. And he's talking about when I refer to Elon wanting more shares, wanting more control. And I said, wants to be richer. Not more money, as you backhandedly insinuated there. Well, Brady, I'm glad you put that in there, and understand my dislike for super wealthy does not exist, okay? Because Warren Buffett, you never heard me say a negative word about the man. He's one of the richest people in the world. There's many people you haven't heard me say negative things about that are super wealthy people, and I have no problem with that. Make as much money as you want to. But what I don't do is I don't fall for this, like for example, somebody else put in the comments, oh, well, he doesn't even take a salary from Tesla. That's how good of a person he is. I'm like, dude, the guy wants more stock. Okay, that means more power. That means more wealth. That's what that means. And you need to understand, I don't put out there that I don't like rich people. What I don't like is the system. Now, they're taking advantage of the system put in place. What I've argued for and make no apologies about for, I want a fair system. The system is so screwed up. And understand, I benefit from the system. My family and I benefit from the system. My in-laws benefit from the system. I'm sure you benefit from the system and all that good stuff. That don't mean it's right. But, it's just the system, right? It's the system we live in. So they're taking full advantage of that, okay? And so what I mean by that, I don't believe, because, for example, here's a prime example. I don't think a child born into a poor family versus a rich family should have different kind of medical care. I don't believe that, because it's a kid. They can't go get a job. They're helpless. They should be punished for whatever family they're born into, right? But in America, they are. And understand, why do I maybe have different perspective than you? I was born on the other side of the tracks. Like, if you've been poor, right, where you literally look in your closet as a child and you go, wow, I got 4 shirts and 2 pair of jeans. And you're sitting there with no heater and you're boiling water. That's how poor we were, to throw in a bathtub in a small town in Alabama. So you're sitting in this much water in the cold, and you live in one of those run-down apartments where you got you have to turn it to try to get the old windows. It's so old, but they never close back. Once they age and have so much layers of paint, they never close all the way, so the cold wind gets in the dead of winter. And so, because being born and raised on that side of the tracks, I have empathy. I know what those people go through, right? And then I'm on the other side of the tracks now. I don't forget where I come from. And so I know the system, right? I know how big the system is. I know, for example, prime example, here's what drives me nuts. Again, I benefit from this, okay? But here's what drives me nuts. A lot of people don't understand this. The reason why Elon doesn't take a salary is because he don't want to pay taxes. Instead of doing that, which is very smart for him, by the way, instead of saying, hey, forget the $300 million in salary, just give me $300 million in stock. Because you know what he does on that? How the rich avoid taxes, not just him. And again, it's not illegal. It's totally legal. This is what they do. They use the buy, borrow, and die strategy, okay? What does that mean? People, what are you talking about? And this is how they avoid those large, large tax bills. And what they do is, for Elon, for example, and many others, they can use the stock options or their stock as collateral to take out loans to fund their extravagant lifestyles. Guess what you don't do on loans? You don't pay income taxes, right? No kind of payroll taxes, none of it. Guess what else you get? For the interest you're actually paying, somehow they're actually able to get a tax deduction for that. That's how they do it, okay? They do it on their properties. They do it on everything else. That's how they do it. That's how a Mitt Romney, who ran for president, pays 9% on federal income taxes. Again, nothing illegal. He's following the system. But the system, of course, as I've showed you, and if you're new, you hadn't seen it, is the rich buy off the government officials pass laws and things, especially when it comes to any kind of do with the IRS, that benefits them. Now, that is the danger, which I've said many times, and this ship has sailed. We can't fix this. When your government, over half of them are multimillionaires now, you even got billionaires getting involved. Billionaires never ran for office. Now they're like, I'm running for office, getting in there and just doing it myself. They don't need that paycheck, but now they can sweep all these bills to help them and their families keep that money, right? That's why the wealth gap continues to grow, okay? And if you're on the right side of it, you know, like me and my family and probably you are and everything else, that's all hunky-dory, but I'm not saying it's right, right? So how is the wealth divide in the U.S.? This just came out like a few months ago, and you can see right here, look at the top 1%. Look at the top 20%. How much in assets and wealth, right? Real estate, stocks, mutual funds, all that stuff. The top 20% own. Well, it's even crazier when you look over here. The top 10% of U.S. households now own 93% of all financial assets. And if you're wondering if you're in the top 10% as far as assets and stuff, you have to have like, it's close to $4 million, right, in assets, and you're there, right? But for such a small group, and this number gets, that 93% keeps getting bigger and bigger. It used to be like 80% 10 years ago, then 85. Soon it'll be 95, then it'll go to 97. Right? And so, as I've said in my weekly videos, for those who watch, there's two different economies. There's two different economies right now. Us with the appreciating assets, right? And then those who don't have the appreciating assets. And they're the ones getting crushed. Right? They're the ones going to pawn shops, putting stuff up for collaterals and taking loans out. I've told you guys about that. You know, pawn shops are loving life right now. Business has never been better for them. You know, I think that personally does suck. I don't like it. Right? I don't like the way the system is set up. Okay? Yes. Yeah, and again, and so anyway, I'm not going to get too far down the rabbit hole on that one, but that's pretty much where I'm at. So again, no disdain for them. I have a disdain for the system. I don't believe that, I think it's 10 people in America should be worth half the country. So it'd be 10 people equal, what is it, about 150 million people? I don't believe that. That makes no sense. It used to not be that way. Okay, and it's very rapidly skewing one way. Okay. Anyway, hope you guys have a great weekend, and I'll see you tomorrow.